welcome to another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I, Rebecca, your host, recap live trials. And I've got an update for you on a really interesting true crime case that I covered, last year. Safe to say, I just ate some chocolate. Yeah, a chocolate cookie. It was so good. It's between... Well, it's almost lunchtime. I probably shouldn't have made it. Anyway, coffee. I got to go to the post office. I got a couple of my resale items that I have to mail. I wanted to show you where I'm at with the diamond painting. This is a mystery painting. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is. There. What do you think? No clue. It's pretty, whatever it is, it's pretty. So my partner asked me to do this side. Then she said, do this side. So now I'm going across the top. Yeah, my sister decided to put a mustache in the middle. So I don't have a clue. Well, I know who the artist is, but I still don't have a clue. Yep. But I do love the colors. I really, really do. Now, I need to put all my stuff back. Okay, be right back. Ready to go. Now, I got my script in front of me. I've got the painting. I'm going to pour out some diamonds. And ready to talk about the Michael Keatley trial. Day number 7. They spent the entire day on one witness. This case is going so slowly. Really, really slowly. And here's why. The defense attorneys have an issue with everything. Absolutely everything. Prior decisions that were made by other judges, they want them revisited, and here's why. And, they should just tell the jury, come at lunchtime. Because every single morning, the jury is told to be there at a certain time, and they are not brought in for over an hour or past that time because their attorneys are up, back and forth. And I'm going to say that these defense attorneys are really, really good. Like, if I committed a crime in Florida, I would want these defense attorneys. They are top notch. These are the same defense attorneys who defended Curtis Reeves. I don't know if you remember Curtis Reeves, the old man, the retired police officer out of Hillsborough County who was sitting in a movie theater, get off my lawn, that kind of guy. And there was a guy in front of him talking on his cell phone during the previews. Not even, the movie hadn't even started. This is during the previews. And he got pissed off with him, and popcorn went flying, and he shot the guy and killed him. This defense attorney's got a not guilty verdict. Not guilty. Yeah. Suffice it to say, I'm not really in agreement with that verdict. But anyway, these are the same defense attorneys. They're good. They are really good. They go over every single piece of minutia in a case to the point where the jury's like, they don't know what to believe at the end of it. And that's what they were doing with this witness. This is a witness's name was Wesley Smith. Now, in prior testimony, it had been learned that he lived in this Ruskin area. This was just a plain white male. Lived in this Ruskin area with his wife and 2 kids, 2 boys, and he moved out of this area. He had a machine shop. Now, he left the machine shop in the area, but he moved his family to Plant City, which is eastern Hillsborough County. This is southern Hillsborough County. Onto his mother's 5-acre ranch where they're, living. His mother actually has a business where she takes horses and people can come out and pay to ride the horses and shoot. Now, according to this witness, it's some kind of sport that they're training for. to be able to shoot from a horse. I don't know, but interesting business. But in any case, so the reason he moved his family, or one of the reasons he moved his family from Ruskin to Plant City, was because he didn't like this gang-infested neighborhood. He didn't like, it was a bad neighborhood. And apparently his sons were starting to associate with some of these gang people, and he didn't like it, so he moved. Now, how much of that's going to be heard by the jury? That was what they were arguing about all morning long. Was the jury going to be able to hear this? So ultimately, the judge said, I will make the decision before the cross-examination, because the state attorney doesn't want to bring any of this out, obviously. Here's why the defense wants this to come out. The defense wants to set up that this was gang-infested neighborhood, that is very likely that someone else shot these people. The other thing that defense was trying to set up, we'll talk about in a minute, but let's talk about the direct examination first. So what the judge said was, I will rule before the prosecution, or before the defense starts their cross-examination. I'll make a ruling on how much of this the jury's going to hear. So on direct examination, we hear that this guy was a machinist for the government, and he would be asked to make things, and he wouldn't even be told sometimes what he was making. They would just give him the specs, and he had to make it. How cool is that? He was really, really good. So he speculated that some of the things he probably was making were weapons, but they're not telling him. You just give him the specs, and he makes it. Anything to do with metal. How cool, right? He knew who Michael Keatley was. When he lived in Ruskin, here comes the ice cream man. He knew who Michael Keatley was. He knew about the robbery. He saw the jars around town that were raising money for the ice cream man during the robbery. His kids would get ice cream from the ice cream truck. So he knew about that. Now, he was also good friends with our friend, David Beckwith, the squirrely guy that I said was on the stand the other day, that worked for Michael Keatley, that held a gun to Michael Keatley's head and said, stop the van, and, the convicted felon, David Beckwith. So David, I don't know if you recall, but David Beckwith's brother, Larry, lived on the Keatley property between Michael Keatley and Michael Keatley's parents. There was another home, and that's where Larry lived. So this guy had been out with his good friend, David Beckwith, to shoot on the property. He had gone out to Larry's house. Now, he kept saying, no, we didn't go to Michael Keatley's property. We went to Larry's house. It's the same thing. To go shooting, and they were going to shoot at a tree, and then they changed their mind, and okay. He did say that, as a machinist in his shop, he did a lot of work contracting for this gun manufacturer. I don't know what he was doing, but he did admit that 99% of people that meet him and find out what he does for a living want to know, can you modify a gun? Including Michael Keatley had approached him about modifying a gun. That came out later on in the testimony. So they talked about, he becomes acquainted with Michael Keatley through David Beckwith. He knew that after the robbery, David had gotten to work for Michael Keatley, and he knew what Michael Keatley, he knew what the division of labor was between his friend David Beckwith and Michael Keatley. And that's how he met Michael Keatley. And Michael Keatley had asked him to modify a weapon. He was also asking about a modification kit That was another thing they were arguing about, this modification kit, because apparently it was very, very new on the market in 2010, and nobody can remember if it was late 2010, early 2011, but it was available at the gun show, and one of the manufacturers of this thing is called the Roni, and it looks like this circular thing that you can attach to a Glock, and it makes it look like it's a rifle. Makes it look like it's a long barrel. No clue. I'm lost. But that's what we learned from Michael Keatley's girlfriend that he purchased at the gun show. So after he gets acquainted with Michael Keatley, he's invited by Michael Keatley to go out to his property and shoot. So they go out, he goes out there with his wife. They go out to this property and they're shooting at a white van. Now we've seen pictures of this white van where the van is upside down on its roof, and they would shoot into it. He said when they shot at it, it was right side up. So afterwards, his wife went around and picked up all the shell casings and put them into a Victoria's Secret bag. Then when she got home, she put it into a shed, and he forgot about it. And so he was questioned, well, is that normal? Does she usually go around and pick up shell casings? Oh yeah, we always pick up after ourselves, you know. Because I guess sometimes he can use them to for other things, because he's a machinist. So he has a shed, a large shed actually, where he keeps all these kind of scraps and stuff, and that's where she put the shell casings. So after the robbery occurred, so yeah, they went shooting. He was shooting with Michael Keatley after the robbery, but then later on down the line, what's this guy's name? Wesley Smith. I keep saying Michael. Wesley Smith was questioned by the detective in this case, the lead detective, and about, what he knows about Michael Keatley and that sort of thing. And he said, if you can think of anything else, give me a call. So later on, he calls him and he says, hey, I thought of something else. I went out there shooting and we collected some shell casings. Are you interested? So the detective says yes. So he goes out to the shed and picks up the Victoria's Secret bag with all these shell casings, and that comes into the case. So I'm sure they're going to compare those shell casings with the shell casings from the murder. So what the defense is doing on cross-examination is trying to point out what a liar this guy is, obviously, that, ruin his credibility, and basically set up, almost like he's trying to set it up like this, like Michael Keatley is being framed for this murder, by his associate David Beckwith, who they had a falling out. Now his best friend wants to come out on Michael Keatley's property and shoot weapons. So what the defense did, pointed out on cross-examination, he says, let me get this straight. You took your sons, you were working, and this is all from prior testimony, you were working on your son's 22. There was something wrong with your son's 22 weapon. Yeah. And you fixed it. And you wanted to go out to Michael Keatley's property to see if that gun would work. Yeah, that's one of the reasons we went out there. With his wife. Now, your wife didn't like this sort of thing, right? No, she didn't. She didn't. Why was she at work with you? Because he said, first of all, he pointed out that you could have done this on your 5-acre ranch, right? You have you target shoot out there. You've got 5 acres. He goes, yeah, I do. But I also target shoot at other places. So the witness said his range at the ranch was like 25 yards. It's for revolvers, handguns. So, but Michael Keatley's range was for rifles. So that 75 yards plus. So that's why he was going he wanted to go out to Michael Keatley's with his weapons. And Michael Keatley had invited him, and he had called Michael Keatley at least one other time saying, can we come out there? And they couldn't, Michael Keatley wasn't available. And so they finally arranged him to go out there. His wife goes to work with him from Plant City. She goes to work with him in Ruskin, and apparently if you leave Ruskin and go back to Plant City, he said it's only a mile out of my way to go over to where Michael Keatley lives and shoot the weapons. Well, why did your wife go to work with you that day? Was she cleaning? What was she doing? And he is, sometimes she cleaned, but mostly, her mother lived across the street, so she'd go over and hang out at her mother's house. And then, but she didn't like to shoot, but she went with him that day. And she knew that they were going there. Crazy. So he said, well, where did you do the repairs on your son's weapon? Oh, out at my shop in Plant City. And he goes, so why didn't you just walk out your door and test the weapon? Why did you need to go to Michael Keatley's property to test your 22? There was a 22 used in the robbery or in the murders. And he said that's when they got into the whole size of the range discussion. So it really makes it sound like David Beckwith and this guy Wesley Smith are trying to set Michael Keatley up for these murders. So who committed? Now, Michael Keatley, current day, on the witness stand now, has hair, just short cropped hair, but this big old, like a ZZ Top kind of beard. But he said at the time he just had maybe a mustache and a goatee, he thinks. The defense pointed out all kinds of things he didn't remember, like the white van. He said, when you went out to the range that day, the white van was already there. Oh, yeah. He says, I pulled around in my truck. Michael opened the gate, and then he walked over to the van, and I drove my truck up to the van. Well, in prior testimony, he said they had towed the van to where they were going to shoot. He didn't remember that. I don't remember that. So all kinds of things he couldn't remember. Yeah. So it was interesting. And this went on all day long. The cross-examination started after lunch and went till almost the end of the day. Then finally, the prosecution got to do their redirect, and that was it. One witness the entire day. One witness. Now, this guy didn't seem to me to be as squirrely as his friend David Beckwith, but just kind of evasive. At one point, he said to the defense attorney, "Why are you being so dramatic?" And the defense attorney said, "Oh, that's just me. I'm always dramatic." I thought that was kind of funny. So I'm just looking at my notes. Okay, let's talk about the update on the swatting case. I covered this swatting case last year. This is a case where these two young men, they're playing on their Xbox or PlayStation. I don't know what the platform was, but they're playing Call of Duty, World War II, to be exact. I don't like first-person shooter games, and this is one of the reasons. So there's a $1.50 bet on the line, and somehow one of them, Gaskell, it's a guy named Gaskell, and the other guy's named Casey Viner. Casey lives in Ohio. Gaskell lives here in Wichita, and they have this bet for $1.50, and Gaskell does something stupid during the game, and they lose the bet. So Viner's really pissed off. So at some point he's like, I'm gonna send cops to your house. I'm gonna have you swatted. And Gaskell's like, sure, go ahead. Here's my address. He didn't think the guy would do it. So he gives him the address. And so Casey Viner hires this guy named Barrios, who's famous at the time. This occurred in 2017. At the time, this Barrios guy was famous on the internet or on YouTube, or I don't know what it was. Famous for sending cops to play swatting, basically. Calling the cops, calling in like hostage situations, murder situations, and getting the cops to go to these addresses where these people were, whoever hired them, they were pissed off at, whoever it was, and the cops would show up, and it would turn out not to be true, and there'd be all this drama. So Viner hires Barris. I think his name was Tyler Barris. Hires Barris to send the Wichita Police Department to Gaskell's address. So Barris actually does some research on the address, finds out that yes, it is a residential home, and Gaskell gets wind that Barris has been hired, and Gaskell still doesn't believe it's going to happen. He's like, sure, here's my address. Or maybe he did think it was going to happen, because he gives Gaskell gives the address where he used to live, not his current address. He's given an old address, which happens to be about a mile down the road from my house, just down the street. Now, I didn't live here in 2017, but you leave my neighborhood, you go out to the main road out here, you go down about a mile, and you take a right, and there's the house where Gaskell used to live. So Barris calls the Wichita Police Department in 2017, says there's a hostage situation at this home, and you need to get out there. So they go out, the SWAT team comes out. Meanwhile, Andrew Finch and his family, who are the current residents of this house, Andrew Finch lives there with his sister and his mother. Now, he had 2 young children at the time, but they were with their mother. They were not present at the property. His sister was upstairs, and his mother and he are sitting down to dinner. Now, the same way we all sit down to dinner, in front of the TV. We get our plate and we sit down in front of the TV. So that's what they did. They got their plate of spaghetti and they sat down in front of the TV. And all of a sudden, they hear cars coming up the alleyway, and they hear cars outside, and they're like, "What the heck is going on?" And they're police cars. And so Finch gets up and opens the front door to go out and find out what the heck is going on. Why are all these cars surrounding his house? He's out there for less than 10 seconds when Officer Rapp, R-A-P-P, shoots him in the chest from 40 yards away and kills him. Now, Officer Rapp gives conflicting testimony over the years. He thought he was going for a gun in his waist. Later on, he testifies, no, he didn't see a gun, but he thought he was going for a gun, and, whatever. Officer Rapp is investigated. Nothing ever comes of it. No, state attorney decides not to prosecute him. The Wichita Police Department doesn't even do an investigation, and he's later on promoted to being a detective. Now, meanwhile, the residents of Wichita are like so pissed off, that this innocent man that was gunned down right outside his home. The sister, she suffers from unbelievable depression and nightmares over this whole thing. The mom was held there by police against her will until it was all investigated. I mean, it was just a horrible nightmare for this entire family. This just really, really horrible. So meanwhile, Viner, Gaskell, and Barris are prosecuted, or they pled guilty. I don't think there was a trial. So Barris ended up pleading to 51 counts of swatting. So this Finch case and 50 other cases. So he gets 20 years in prison. Viner pleads guilty and is sentenced to 15 months in prison in Ohio. And Gaskell is sentenced to 18 months in prison here in Kansas. So what happened after that is the Finch family sues in state court. They sue Officer Rapp, so that means the city of Wichita. They sue Officer Rapp, and it's thrown out. The case is thrown out. Logistically, what happens is the defense lawyers for the city of Wichita went into court and said, this officer has immunity. He's a police officer. He has immunity. And the state or court agreed with them. So they threw out the lawsuit. So they go into federal court, and now they're arguing in federal court. They sued Officer Rapp. But the city of Wichita is arguing that the family should not be allowed to sue because of this decision that happened in state court, that stops them from suing in federal court because it's already been decided that this guy had immunity. So they were waiting for a decision at this federal court level about whether their case was going to be able to proceed. Meanwhile, the city of Wichita had paid to date $443,000 in legal fees, and the Finch family had spent probably more than that in legal fees to date. So $1 million has gone out in legal fees between the two parties. So they get together at a mediation, and during the mediation, it was decided that the city of Wichita would pay the Finch family $5 million to settle this case. So it had to be voted on by the city council. The settlement had to be approved by the city council. So, and it's interesting because the city council voted 6-1 to approve the settlement. That happened last night. And the only person that voted against the settlement was my landlord. My landlord is a city councilman. It's a huge town. But I just I wanted to do a case that had kind of sorry about the clock, had a local flavor to it. And that you don't get more local than that. My landlord didn't want this settled. He wanted to wait it out. He wanted to spend more legal fees to get this case thrown out on the federal level. And it might have been, but not before they expended way more money in legal fees. So the city council voted to approve $5 million settlement. So what happened with the settlement? Out of the $5 million, close to $2 million of that money, $1.8 million of that money goes to the defense attorneys, or the attorneys for the Finch family. That's the plaintiff attorneys. So that covers their fees and their costs. That leaves the family with $3.2 million. So $1.2 million of the $3.2 million goes into a bank account strictly for the family's use. The mother, the sister, and the two small children. $1 million of it was structured. Actually, $2 million. $1 million for each child was structured. And what that means is that those children will receive lump sum payments over their lifetime. So I think that's a good deal for the Finch family. And what the council said was that it puts closure on a sad chapter in the city of Wichita. Because at the time, people were really, really upset about this. People were buying billboards and putting this police officer's, likeness on this billboard saying, he needs to be prosecuted, and he never was. He's still on the police force. And I think maybe I mentioned this already, but this comes on the heels, like 5 days prior to this decision, there was an independent, what they called it, a cultural and operational assessment that was done independently of the Wichita Police Department that said, it was in a 123-page report, how bad the police officer, how bad the culture is at this police department. There's lack of trust between the ranks. They all think that they are understaffed. They can't keep staff. They keep leaving, going other places. They're not able to fill the vacancies. There's lack of diversity, corruption that goes uninvestigated. There have been 23 police shootings in the city of Wichita in over a 5-year period. None of those officers were investigated, disciplined, nothing. Nothing. So, and the city council just kind of added as an addendum that things are going to change. They're going to infuse new DNA into the Wichita Police Department. We'll see. It's a very busy police department. There is a lot of stuff going down here in Wichita. You know, we have a huge drug problem here with the fentanyl and the opioids, and there are shootings and fires, and I mean, just some crazy stuff that goes on in this city. You know, I just stay home. I'm just in my little box. I don't, you know, I go to the grocery, I come home. But yeah, not the place you want to move to raise your family. Wichita, not really. No, sorry, just not. Unless you, it's like my son lives in the next county over, and a beautiful area, nice schools, gorgeous property. Yeah, not Wichita. Anyway, okay, guys. Oh, I forgot the calendar. Let's talk about what happened. Let's see. March 15th. Today is Wednesday, March 15th. And before I read this, let me tell you, I'm going to be live tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. So convert that to wherever you are. 6:30 p.m. Central. Craft with me Wednesday. I'm going to be doing some cross stitch tonight with my friend Shalene of Shalene's Creativity Room. Yeah, we're going to talk about. We're just going to see what she's been up to. You know, she is like my idol when it comes to cross stitch. She's so good. So tune in for that. So we're going to talk about the Whiskey Creek murders, part 1, the crime. So Monday, Tuesday, we talked about this jewel heist. So this comes into play here in these murders. So the jewel heist at the American Museum of Natural History wasn't the last time that Jack the Surf Murphy would find himself on the wrong side of the law. In fact, his crimes grew even more sinister after he served his time for the heist, because he went to jail and learned how to do all this stuff, including his involvement in the brutal Whiskey Creek murders. In 1967, the bludgeoned and stabbed bodies of 2 women were found weighted down in Whiskey Creek Canal near Hollywood, Florida. What? I used to live in Hollywood. Not in 1967. I never heard of Whiskey Creek, though. I don't know where that is. Yeah. The women were identified as Terry Ray Frank and Annalee Mon. They had been suspected of stealing nearly $500,000, which today would be equivalent to $4 million, in stocks from the brokerage firm they worked for in Los Angeles. The theft was discovered after the women quit and moved to Florida, where they moved in with Murph the Smurf. Oh, I'm not Smurf. Surf. Why did I say Smurf? Okay, now I'm going to call him Smurf. Murph the Smurf. Murphy. They moved in with him. Yay, nice guy. All right, part 2 tomorrow, which will be the trial and the aftermath. I don't read these ahead of time, by the way. So that's the show for today, guys. If you enjoyed the content, hit that thumbs up button. Yeah, the like button. You can also show your appreciation by donating to the channel. If you look at the thumbs up button and go right across, there's a thanks button that you can donate one time, and that will go to help support the contents of the channel. Also, consider subscribing. If you're subscribed already, thank you very much. But consider becoming a member, so your membership donation can go to help support the content of the channel. That's the advertisement part of the show. Guys, I hope to see you tonight at 6:30 in my live. It's always a fun time. We don't talk about crime, then we just talk about crafting and each other's lives, and we chit chat, and you know, who got a job and who went on an interview and what's the weather like in Michigan. So my friend in Michigan just went to Germany. I want to hear all about that too. All right, guys, have a great afternoon, Wednesday. Here it's very, very windy. I'll see you tonight or tomorrow in Crafting and Crime Daily. Take care, everybody. Bye.